Hi guys, today I'm going to show you some more of Lightroom Mobile for editing your photos. So I just am on the home button at the top left corner, and I'm actually going to add another photo. So what I can do is go into my library. It's the one that looks like a stack of vertical books. And then if I wanted to go back to a photo I'd already started on, I could click All Photos. And then you can see my library there of photos. But at the bottom right corner, I can also just do the add, just like I did in the video yesterday. I'm choosing a different photo today, this one right here, because I want to show you guys how to edit color. Okay, so yesterday I covered crop, profiles, auto, and light. And today in this video, I'm going to cover color, effects, and detail. Okay. All right, so I don't really need to do much to the light of this photo. It's pretty well, like it's good brightness. I can maybe add a little bit of contrast, but I can always come back to that. What I want to focus on right now is color. Okay, so I'm going to click on the color button down at the bottom. Okay, and then this menu is going to come up. So there's some basic choices here. At the top left, it says black and white. So I could make this a black and white image here. Which actually looks pretty good. I might need to add some contrast if I chose to do that. But for now, I'm going to edit in color. So I'm going to click that again and go back to color. White balance, below that, there's a click-through menu, and it gives me 3 options. If we were working with a raw photo, it would give more options. But since this is a JPEG photo shot on my phone, I only have as shot, auto, and then I have custom, which means I'm going to slide these sliders. So I'm going to do custom, just so you guys can see how to do that. So with custom, I have my temperature slider. I can go to the left for cooler or to the right for warmer. So remember, when we set white balance in our camera, it's doing that in kelvins. So less kelvins is cooler, more kelvins is warmer. Okay, the other option I have for editing the white balance is tint. So I can go to the more green side or I can go to the more magenta side. You're looking for a balance between what's correct, what's gonna look correct for the lighting, but also what looks good. And that could be a little bit of style that you add into it. Like some people like their photos a little bit more magenta than is completely realistic, or they like their photos a little bit cooler. I would just judge it by the photo that you're editing. Okay, the next thing I have is this vibrant slider. So that's making the color more vivid. So I can make the colors more vivid. You can see that's a little bit of a problem here going that high because her skin gets too orange. Or I can make it less vivid so I can kind of fade out the colors. Again, you want to strike a balance between like what's correct, but also you can add in your own style here. So if I want it to look a little bit more like vintage, I could go less vibrance. And if I want a little bit more dramatic color, I could go a little bit more. Next slider is saturation. So that's how much color is there. It's pretty similar to vibrance, but it's slightly different. So if I do more saturation, you can see the effect that has, or less saturation. I want this photo to be colorful, so I'm just going to add a tiny bit of saturation. Again, you'll need to choose what works for your photo and the style that you're going for. Okay, so then I'm going to scroll back up to the top, and then there's some more advanced options on the top right here. So there's mix, which I'll get to in a second. There's also this tool that looks like a dropper, and that's for my white balance. So if I click on that dropper, I can move this circle around to set the white balance to a different part of the photo than the default. And you can see I can make it cooler depending on where I place it, or I can make it warmer just depending on the photo. So that's going to automatically change my temperature and tint. And it is a good way to correct color if you feel like it's off and you want to set it to something else. I'm not crazy about what that's doing, so I'm going to undo at the top. Okay, now I'm going to go to the mix button, and here's where it gets more advanced and a lot more interesting. I'm going to click mix. So now I'm in color mix, and you'll see that there's a spectrum of colors across there. So I've got red, orange, yellow, green, cyan, blue, and then the different purples. Honestly, I forgot what they're called right now. One's, I think, magenta, and one's purple. But anyways, you can just look visually. So like, let's say I want to edit the orange in her skin. I can click on the orange, okay? And then I can use these 3 sliders below to edit just the oranges in the photo. So if you remember back to the reading assignment, hue is the actual color. So I can make this color, this orange color, more yellowish, or I can make it more reddish. I'm just gonna go extreme so you guys can see the difference there. Okay, now one thing that's important to know about this panel, if there is no orange in the photo, it won't change anything. Okay, so the color has to exist. So I don't really want to change the hue. I'm gonna set that back to 0. Okay, saturation is how much color is there. So how much orange in this case is there? Do I want more orange? I'd go to the right, or less orange. I want a little less orange because some other factors are making her skin look kind of orange, so I'm going to tone that down a little bit. And then the last slider is luminance, which is how bright the color is. So if I want it brighter, I go to the right, and if I want the color darker, I go to the left. Okay, so you can see I can like enhance just particular areas of the photo with this color mix, which is really cool. Now, let's say I want to make the reds a little bit different too. So I can go to the red, and let's say I want the reds to be like a more kind of red purple. Okay, I can slide those to the left. And then if I want them more or less saturated, I can play with that. I can make them brighter or darker with luminance. And then I could go through the other colors. Like she was writing a word in green on her board, so I could maybe like enhance that by increasing saturation, decreasing luminance, and it's gonna bring out the greens more. So any colors I have in the photo, I could go through and I could edit those specific colors. This is a great way to not only correct colors that look off in your photos, but also to add some style to it. So there's different kind of editing styles, and you can definitely Google those. But there's ones where like they'll make, you know, things look more matte and less contrasty. There's other ones that have really high contrast. There's some where it's kind of like meant to look like color film. So there's lots of different options. Okay, if I'm done in this window, I'm going to hit done. Okay, and that's all the color thing. I'm going to show one more thing on this video today, and that's effects. So if I click on effects at the bottom, it's going to bring up this menu. There's some options here. Okay, I'm going to talk about split toning in a second. But the first thing is if I wanted to add some texture to my photo or decrease the textures, soften them in my photo, I can do that with the texture slider. I'm not particularly crazy about that, so I'm going to back off that. But it is an option, just depending on what you're doing. Okay, and then I have clarity. So clarity will both add contrast and sharpness. If you want your photos to have a lot of like immediate visual impact, this is a good thing to boost up. If we could use the selective tool, I would show you how to like paint it on just skin to make skin softer. But in general, I wouldn't go like too soft with clarity because then people just start to look really weird and fuzzy. Okay, so I'm gonna up the clarity a little bit. And then dehaze. This is a good one if you shoot backlit photos. This one in particular is not, but what it's gonna do is help correct that haziness. I'll just show you what it does on a regular photo so you can kind of imagine if it was a backlit photo. If you wanted to add a little bit of haziness, you could go to the left. Okay, the next settings are for adding a vignette or correcting a vignette. So a vignette is darkness around the edges. So if I go to the right, you'll see that it's correcting a vignette I don't actually have. It's lightening the edges. If I go to the left, you can see it's adding that darkness on the edges. So vignettes technically aren't correct, but some people like them. In this particular photo, I don't think it's a great idea, but some photos where you want to add like a little bit of moodiness or you want to direct the viewer's eye to the middle, making the edges dark can look good. And then if you do have a darkness on the edge that's bugging you, you can get rid of it. Once I activate that slider, you'll see that you have more options. So I'm just going to do a real extreme vignette so you can see what it does. So if I change the midpoint, it'll either make the spread out of the vignette bigger or smaller. Okay, if I change the feather, the edge of the vignette can either get harder, that's to the left, or softer. Roundness is how round that vignette is, if it's less or more round. Okay, and then I have a highlight correction. So sometimes when you add a vignette, like things kind of look dingy, so you can brighten up highlights if you want. Okay, I'm gonna take that vignette off before I move on. And you can see those are deactivated if you don't use the vignette slider. Okay, the next section is grain. So if I want to add grain so it looks like, some people like to look at more like a film photo, I can increase grain. Just be careful about adding too much because it starts to look pixelated and not great. This is good if, again, you're going for like a film look. Once I activate the grain slider, I can increase the size of the grain or decrease it. And I can make the grain, the little dots, round, or sorry, rougher or less rough, more smooth. So those are some options there. Okay, one last thing, and I actually noticed there on the homepage there's a tutorial for split toning, but if you click on split toning, what this will do is allow you to tone or like add a color tint to the shadows and or highlights of your photos separately. So you can see there's two bars here. If I slide over, like I'm toning the highlights here, if I slide over the bar to a particular color, you can see the bright parts of the photo are getting tinted that color. And then if I do that for the shadow slider, you can see the dark parts of the photo are getting tinted that color. This is a really good way to make a particular style in your photos. Just be careful, you know, that it still looks good. Like the shadow one really doesn't look great on my photo, but maybe I want to do a little bit with the highlights. Okay. At the bottom, you can also change the balance of how you're toning it. Okay, so if I like had shadows and highlights activated here, then I can make the balance of one stronger than the other. Okay, back off of that. And you can see like they're just totally different looks depending on what I'm going for. So I'm going to take those back down to 0 because I don't particularly want to add those on my photo, but it's a great editing option for those of you who do. Okay, so that's all I'm going to do in the tutorial today. I feel like that's a lot. And remember, you can always go back and like, so I want to save this one. I'm going to hit the check mark. Okay, but I can still now go back to my all photos and I can still edit this. It's not like once I click OK, I'm stuck. So if later I realize like, oh, that looks way too magenta, or I actually want a little bit warmer or whatever I want to do with it, I still have those options available. Okay. All right, so tomorrow I'll finish up the other things in here. But for today, go ahead and try those things out and hopefully they work for you and you like them.